American Film Critics Association. Today we are, hey. Today we are thrilled to be talking to the very talented cast and equally talented creator responsible for the hit Amazon series, Harlem. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the African members who are taking part in our roundtable today, beginning with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Kim Singleton in New York City, KB in Houston still, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, Jill Monroe in LA, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, and Mercedes Springer also in Atlanta. I'm gonna let you guys do what you do so well, and we will see you on the other side.
KB here with Through the Lens of Lady KB, and my question is for Tracy. So, already in your career, you have written some iconic Black comedies, and I am adding Harlem to the list because I absolutely adore it. And what I love is that you just show Black women, you show us in all of our glory and all of our flaws. So can you talk a little bit about what made this particular project so special, and what topics and subject matters were you able to explore specifically in Harlem that you hadn't been able to before in any of your other shows?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for that. That was very nice of you to say. I would say Harlem is the most personal project I've ever done. And the reason I say that is because it's the first time that I've actually written my age range and my experiences. And it just was coming from a place of wanting to channel where I was in my life. And then also when I wrote it, there wasn't anything like it on the air. And whenever I see like a hole in the marketplace, I try to fill it instead of complaining about it. And I just have always been really passionate about Black women and, our representation. And I just really wanted to create something that showed friends who are messy and complicated. And I wanted to build on things like Living Single and Sex and the City, and even Golden Girls. I'm going to shout that out too, because that was the OG like friendship comedy that I loved growing up. But I wanted to do something, but do it with Black and brown people in it. And I wanted to show New York the way that I had never seen it before. Because I feel like with shows like Friends and Sex and the City and Girls, we were kind of gentrified out of those shows. And the New York I knew was very Black and brown and culturally rich. And I was just like, I want to be able to put that on screen myself. So for all of those reasons, and just for it being a personal thing, I decided to take it on. But most people don't know this, but I wrote this before Girls Trip. So at the time that I wrote it, people weren't really ready for the show, and they thought it was maybe too niche. That was kind of the feedback, was like, it's well written and funny, but are Black women friends like a mainstream idea? And then of course, Girls Trip comes out and makes $150 million. And then suddenly people are like, oh, I guess it is like a mainstream thing. And that kind of opened the door for Harlem. But it was written at a time when I needed it, and I just didn't see it on the air. But that was kind of the genesis of Harlem.
Well, incredible. I loved every minute, and you are right. Whoo, boy, is it messy, but I cannot wait to see more. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Mercedes here with She Critiques in Atlanta. Absolutely loved the show. So pretty much, okay, cuffing season is upon us right now. And I think Megan's character, Camille, is going to have a lot of women running back to their exes. I'm speaking from experience. But I want to know from the ladies in the cast, is spinning the block to your ex still taboo, or are there rules to going back to your ex?
Does it depend on the time frame, maybe? See, I'm the person that I always think, oh, I could be friends with my ex, or I could be friends with my ex, sure. But then you become friends with them and you realize that they're still in love with you, and then it's problematic. So no, so it's a no for me.
Yeah, I kind of look at exes just like across the board, whether it's like a romantic relationship or a friendship, like there's a reason why you left or there's a reason why you split. And so I think sometimes in retrospect, when we kind of think, when we bring back the memories of that relationship, sometimes the memories can be imbalanced. So we can think of all the horrible things that happened, but sometimes we forget the good, or we can think of all the good things that happened, but then we don't remember some of the things that needed work. And so because of that, it makes it a very tricky, sticky circumstance if you want to revisit an old friendship, relationship, what have you, without having first revisited all the things and all the reasons why you might have split up or all of that. So I think I consider it thin ice and not impossible, but you definitely have to have a full scope of what the relationship was and what you want it to be now.
Mm. And also I will say that it's more common in the queer community that like queer women will be friends with their exes. Queer men, like, it's like, oh, we all, not me, but in general, it's like y'all all hang together and there's no judgment. I love that. But I definitely do see it more in the queer community than other places.
Y'all are definitely giving me some notes because I am currently riding that bike again.
Are you really?
Yes, girl.
Get your off the
we
bike.
have to talk.
Just because right now I am busy. And so it's just easier to be like, all right, this work don't occupy my time while I go do other things. So I'm listening, I'm taking it in, and I'm rethinking some decisions I just made.
But I love that though. I love that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm of the same mind as Grace. I feel like, if it didn't work before, and sometimes, it can be that the timing wasn't right, or it can be many other things. But if it's like a compatibility thing, or you weren't getting, or whatever it may be, in that case, I'm like, yes, people can grow and people can change. There's that. But I think if it didn't work the first time, you might find yourself back in the same situation.
Mm. Perfect. Thank you so much. You're saving a lot of lives with that advice. Thank you.
I'm laughing at you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Singleton, considered Black Lit podcast and television show out of New York City. And this series is so much fun. Many of aspects of it, I connect with my friends when we hang out in Harlem. I like the chemistry between all the characters. So my question is, do you do anything special to create that chemistry? Like, do you go out and hang out in Harlem before you go on set? Or if you didn't, do you do it now? And
it was natural. I would say. I know when I chemistry read with Grace, we were ad-libbing some of the same lines. And we were talking about, before we even booked the job, we were talking about making Brazil nut milk in Harlem. She said, when we get to Harlem, you got to tell me how to make Brazil nut milk. So it just like was there. Mm-hmm. And then I met Shaniqua and I'm like, oh my God, who is this amazing, brilliant, vivacious woman? I need you in my life. And then Megan, and I'm like, we were thick as thieves, okay? Yes, my road dog. And then I met Tyler, and he's from Philly, and that like brotherly, beautiful, protective energy. And so whatever the combination was with casting, it's like we met each other and genuinely was like, I love you.
I think the question we got asked a lot on set was, are you guys sure y'all never met before this? Like, you sure? Yeah. And Megan and we did. And so we were so excited to work together. And we were just saying earlier, just a few months prior, how much we wanted to work together. So that was a treat for us. And then Jerry and Shaniqua, like, we were just like gifted. Like, we were just like, oh my God, what a gift to have these girls, kind of join that camaraderie. And it just felt like all of us had been friends from the time we were young. Like, we had spanned like seasons of our lives together. Like, I find that to be really rare, especially as you get older, you know what I mean? That kind of connection, but it happened so seamlessly for us. And Tracy, girl, we got you to thank, honey. Okay. Yeah. We are so happy. We're so happy.
And I'll just add, the chemistry was there. It really was. We did a chem read with everybody just to kind of mix and match and see. And I also, you guys didn't comment on this, so I will. I even like the look of everyone. it was important to me that everybody has a unique complexion and body type and build, and just, I looked at them all together and it wasn't deliberate. And I was like, oh, what a beautiful like spectrum of like Blackness. It just really was like profound to me in that way. And then the fact that they loved each other and got along, I was like, oh, then we have to like do this, because it's just already so beautiful to look at and watch. And also the thing that I still remember, I don't know if it was the first day of shooting, but you guys praying together was a really special, beautiful moment. But I don't know who was even doing the prayer, but the four of you just knelt down, and like there's like a picture of you guys praying. And I was like, wow, what a great group. And Tyler and Megan also just like really, really great chemistry. And immediately when I saw them read together, I was like, oh, this is like a home run like connection. So you guys are great.
Yeah. Tyler, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt that too, you know, from the first chemistry. And, you know, I have a unique experience too, because I'm the man that's coming into this celebratory space of these Black women. And it's like, even for me, I mean, the energy was just like, I mean, I joke with them all the time. It's like, I'm an only child. They're like the sisters that I've always wanted, that I've always needed. Because when I got there from day one, I mean, I had met Megan at the chemistry read, and that was effortless. You know what I'm saying? It was seamless, that we were just in the flow. And a lot of that goes back to, you know, Tracy and casting. They do a great job of what they do. But even when I got to the table read, just everyone was greeting me with open arms. And it wasn't just like, you know, you could tell they wasn't just being polite to be polite. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was actually, it was a genuine space that I was walking into. And I wasn't there on the first day when everybody was praying, but I remember on the last day, all five of us, we were in my trailer, and we had a prayer, you know what I'm saying? And it was, and it was just everything that I needed. And I don't feel like not one day, not one moment of my experience in this first season ever felt forced. So that's just a blessing, because you're not always in a cast like that. You know, a lot of times you show up, if you don't like them, it's whatever, you still got to show up and do your work as a professional. But anytime you can get into a space like this, I mean, it's a blessing.
Man. Awesome. Well, the chemistry definitely comes through. Love, love, love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Happy with Couple Social. Can we talk about Colin and Angie's relationship? Tracy, one of the things, I love the show, but I kept saying in the back of my mind, being like, girl, get a job. Get a job. Well, you can do your thing and get a job. What was the inspiration? And I'm like, because I'm like, if she's your friend, she's going to say, girl, you got 30 days to get a job or keep it moving. So what was the inspiration behind that? And is she going to get a job?
Not really. But I think the inspiration behind that is real life. And I'm not going to like name names, but I definitely have friends and family members that are highly leaning towards the codependent side of things, and just are used to people kind of taking care of them, and are not like comfortable pushing themselves out totally to be independent. And for me, like, those people exist, and they're in my friend circles. And the thing with Grace and Shanique, they have such great chemistry, but with their characters, I think there's kind of an equal codependency going on. In some ways, like, I think that Quinn does rely heavily on Shaniqua's character as well. And I think there's a little bit of like, I want you to go be independent and get out of my space, but also please don't leave me. So I don't even know if it's totally all Angie. I think in some ways Quinn is a little bit of an enabler to her not having to go out and get a job. But I think that's a real dynamic that a lot of people find themselves in, whether it's romantic relationships or platonic. But I think it's just kind of a comedic exploration of like a codependent relationship.
But she does need to get a job, though.
She does. If she were my friend, she would get a job.
Hi, Jill Monroe, YouTube Stiletto Jill. This question is for the ladies of the cast. I love the chemistry, as we talked about, of the relationships and the way that the friendships feel familiar yet fresh. what are some of your favorite elements or characteristics of these friendships as a force? Then as sort of we see them break off into individual sort of situations within themselves as well.
For me, it's their ability to put the relationship first. No matter like what's going on, no matter what like conflict they may have, there's always an understanding that we are a tribe and we're gonna work it out, whether you're mad at me, you're gonna take this jab or not, whether I'm giving you a little bit of shade, there's always a priority to maintain the friendship. And that's one thing that I really like had to learn from these ladies, because I'm quick to like go somebody. But it's so important to just like be able to work it out, like have the conversation. And I think it's also to like the commitment to just be with one another that I really cherished from these ladies.
Yeah, for me, it's a safe space. I feel like, especially in the last couple of years, it's been a very traumatic time for everyone. And so finding safe spaces where you can be your authentic self, where you can be vulnerable and transparent and show all parts of you, it's so important. And I really feel like that's what these sisters have with each other, is a safe space to cry, to be upset, to be honest with each other, to tell each other what's on our minds. And so you know, the more I see that reflected in my own life, just how much I really value that. And so being able to see it represented here in the show, I think is indispensable.
Hi, Carolyn Foster, Here's What Happened, and Carolyn Talks podcast. So my question is for everyone, but I want to start with Tracy. One of the things that I really love about this show is how realistic it is, and it touches on subjects that Black women in particular face daily. And one of them is the discussion on uterine fibroids and uterine conditions. And this is something that I personally have experienced. I've had fibroids, I've had a myomectomy, I've had surgeries to remove them. And there is no Black woman that I know in my life who is above the age of 30 that does not have fibroids. And I want to ask you about including this in the discussion, because I've never seen it discussed in any TV show or film that centers Black women. So I wanted to ask you, Tracy, about including this in the storyline, and then for the cast about this, having this discussion while you're reading the scripts and then during rehearsal and filming. And for Tyler, I want your perspective as a man, because my brother is 10 years older, so he's familiar with things, but we don't get it. We don't get the perspective of men in women's lives, because, you know, we have things like PCOS and endometriosis that do affect Black women a lot. And it does affect, I think, the relationships between Black women and men. So I want your perspective on that as well, from being from being involved in the show. And
I just want to say, go ahead, Barbados.
Hey. Love the accent. I was in the writer's room. It kind of came up organically. And one of the Black women writers in the room actually was dealing with that. And then that kind of sparked a very honest, vulnerable discussion of all of the stuff that we had been silently dealing with, and just showing up with a brave face to work. And I think what was going on was that, and I get it, because it's like, it's work and it's professional. So people just feel like they can't really be open and honest about what they're dealing with. And then we kind of started tearing up when we realized that there was just personal struggles galore in this room. And the majority of the women in the room were Black women. And so we just bonded over the fact that, like, wow, we're not allowed to cry. We're not allowed to share these stories. We're not allowed to be vulnerable. We're not allowed to talk about, you know, some of the things that we're dealing with privately. And I think like this idea of a strong Black woman, or a fierce, like, or fearless Black woman, I get it. And I think that's great. And I think that, like, the reason behind that was well-intentioned, but what it also did was it denied us the permission to be weak and vulnerable at times. And so that's where the episode kind of came from, was all of us just admitting that. And with fibroids in particular, I wanted to highlight it because, like you said, it's an actual issue that affects Black women. And a lot of times when Black women go to doctors to get diagnosed or medicated or help for it, they're either misdiagnosed or sent away or dismissed in a way that other women are not. And so that was the reason why we kind of explored that with Ty, because in the actual writer's room, it came out that it took several doctors to figure out what was actually the problem. And, you know, and then when the solution was presented, it was, oh, well, then maybe you just don't need kids. And it was just a harsh, like, you know, discussion instead of a thoughtful, nuanced, like, way into it that I think a lot of white women are afforded. So that was kind of like the genesis of that episode and that particular discussion.
Reading that part of the script, it definitely was like a moment. Just because, you know, in undergrad, I studied African-American studies, right? So there was a lot of stuff about Black women who are forced to get hysterectomies or like who don't know that they're getting them as children. And there's like this history here in America of trying to not only take control of the Black woman's body, but stop the Black woman's ability to reproduce. And our wombs are so powerful. And so it makes sense for white supremacy, right? Not that it makes sense, but for white supremacy to prevail, that they would try to go in a Black woman and silence her body in that way. I have an aunt who has fibroids, who struggles to this day. And it's interesting having conversations with her because it feels like, and she also had a hysterectomy. She also has her ovaries taken, like all of these things that are being done to her body. And it's almost like she constantly, I mean, think about how intimate it is to even like use the restroom with somebody, right? But imagine having different people exploring your body, telling you, oh no, that doctor was wrong. We're gonna do this, but that doctor already took this out of my body. And so now you're gonna do this. Oh no, and so continuing to get second opinions from the same kinds of people who don't care about the longevity of Black womanhood in America to begin with. I also have a friend, because you mentioned endometriosis, who had to move back here from LA because it is so under researched, because it doesn't affect men. Or for what we know right now, it doesn't affect men or male at birth, people who were born male. And so it is sometimes underreported, sometimes it's misdiagnosed as other things, and it's not researched enough. And so she had experiences in LA where it got so much worse because people were almost experimenting on her. And if we know from slavery time, like Black women were experimented on. That's how we have modern day gynecology and like brain surgeons and stuff like that. It's like it was explored on Black babies. And so just to have this conversation in the room on a queer masculine performing body, with the assumptions that come with that, I'm so excited for the conversations in the forums on that when this show comes out.
Well, I think from my perspective, you know, it's unique because on one hand, you know, I don't experience this, you know, but in my life, I've had so many family members, friends, people that I know. I've had so many Black women talk to me about feeling dismissed and feeling silenced. And, you know, and like where I come into play is like, you know, and Jerry had talked about it, about feeling that protective energy. Because when it comes to physical protection, of course, I'm going to be there. Like one place, I guess, that's a different contrast to that shows like my juxtaposition is my ability to like protect in a different way, to listen, to be tender enough, to be open, and you know, just be there with them as they go through this, because like it just blows my mind that one of the through lines of everything that they've been telling me is everything that y'all have been saying. Like they're going to doctor after doctor and people are just continuing to dismiss them, and they feel like they're voiceless. And I just feel like Tracy did such a good job of just not only highlighting that specifically, but just the full juxtaposition of who we are as people, but who we are specifically as Black women. It's not just you know, because when we see it on TV or you see it on the news, it's like this, like strong, sassy type of like, you know, one note. And it's so much deeper than that. You know what I mean? Of course, there's strength, but there's vulnerability too. There's tenderness to go along with that. that strength. And I just feel like, you know, I'm continuing to learn more and more about it, even through the work that we're doing on the show. So I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and I just feel like it was a very, I just feel like it was an important aspect to involve into the storyline.
For the other ladies, anything to add?
I mean, I think Jerry said it all, you know, and I think, and, you know, again, just going back to the fact that Tracy and the writer's room took the time to just make this a part of it and to tackle it. And then, as Jerry said, with all the innuendos that come with that, specifically, I think that it is going to be a conversation piece that frees a lot of people, just like it did in the writer's room, to say, yeah, I am dealing with this. I am struggling with this. I feel alone. I know other people are going through it, but I didn't realize how close, in essence, that a lot of times when you feel alone, you don't realize that the people that you need are really that close to you, that are experiencing the same things, because you don't have those conversations. So hopefully it opens the forum, and I believe that it will, to just not be alone in it, and to be supported and loved and helped, you know, as Tyler said, through it. You take your words out of my brain. Thanks, girl.
Hey, well, I have fibroids, so thank you.
Oh,
Tracy.
wow.
Yeah. I mean, Kamala Harris, when she was a senator, she actually passed a bill, introduced a bill about amplifying research and stopping for uterine fibroids. So it's about time. It does get attention, and it makes it more real, because it is one of the things that lots of Black women suffer from and is consistently dismissed. So thank you. Now,
thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, I participated in a lot of medical articles and done like clinical trials and stuff like that.
Oh,
so, because it's that under researched. But I was interested in, why was it important for you to include Black queer women? Because so often when we see these storylines of, you know, girlfriends, college friends navigating life, they're all straight. And so I just wanted to know, why was it, you know, important for you to include the storyline? And for Jerry, you know, what were your feelings? Why was it important for you to portray, and what do you think, you know, your character represents?
It just didn't feel authentic and right. And also just, it's inaccurate to my actual friend circle. So that was the real reason behind it. It wasn't even political. It just was necessary, because that's what my friend circle looks like. And it's multiple queer people in my circle and orbit and dated, and it's just so organic. And these are people that I grew up with, they're people I went to college with, and I work with, and like I'm just surrounded by beautiful, amazing members of the queer community, and I'm like, I have to. And that was the thing that, in looking back at some of the earlier shows that you mentioned, I think that was true maybe of their experience at that time, but not true of my experience at this time. And it wouldn't have felt right for me to not include Ty as a character. And I'm really grateful that everybody I've never had any like pushback or anything about it. It's just like, well, I'm glad that you're doing this. And this is a great like evolution of the, like you said, the straight female friend circle. Like, you know, it's important to have a character like Ty, but yeah, it wasn't a political thing. It was this is my life, and it's gonna feel inaccurate and inauthentic if I don't do it. And luckily, I will be honest, I was super worried about the casting of Ty. I really was, because I didn't want someone straight to pretend to be queer. And there weren't that many, and there still aren't. And Jerry, you're gonna blow up after this, but there are just not that many like out queer actors of color. And when we were looking at the list, I was like, oh my God, and then it became a thing of, well, are you open to casting someone straight? And I'm like, no, we should be able to find this person, because like, it's a slap in the face, I think, if we don't make the effort. And then, I believe in like the universe and fate, because maybe 2 weeks after this discussion, I think Jerry moves to LA, and then comes in for casting. So I'll let Jerry talk about that. But yeah, it was kind of like tailor-made for you. And when she walked in, it was like, oh, okay, we found our tie. And then she nailed the audition, thank God. But because it would have really sucked if like you came in and like bombed, but you actually didn't. So it was like, oh, this was the heavens like all aligned for this. And I was really happy because you're fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like what I keep saying is like the writing is so good and so specific that even as I was reading it, I was like, we're allowed to say this stuff, which is crazy to think, because it's like we should be, right? And it felt so authentic. Like it took me, like I just memorized the scenes very quickly because it was that good. And I'm like, I want to see like more about this story. I want to know more about this character. But I know for me growing up, even like, I feel like even some actresses that I know to be queer, that we know are queer now, weren't able to explore that. So I feel blessed to be able to my first big job is like an authentic queer character. And I just know that tie, and it's something that I think is a testament to the whole team, the whole creative team, is that they don't just recreate, right? They elevate. And so even with the fact that Ty is a queer Black woman who is the CEO of her own tech company, which is something that doesn't exist, right? The fact that was able to be imagined up and brought to life, which I feel like is, we're behind in queer representation, right? Right now is just like recreating stories or somebody who isn't queer creating a slapstick queer character in order to serve the purpose of whatever main character it is. And I'm like, I'm completely and utterly sick of the shit. Okay. And so as Tracy said, like I experienced so much queerness, so much nuance in queerness in so many of my different friend groups. And so to constantly see Black female friends, friend groups of color, and to be like, none of y'all like the kitty cat. Now that is hard to believe. I mean, the probability. And so I feel like not only did I feel blessed and very much seen, because at the end of the day, I'm a Philly John too, right? And I felt like it was like so like gritty and like niggerish in a way that I loved when I was reading the character, and then coming onto set and having that conversation with Deirdre about not wanting to have this character look like any stereotypical queer masculine performing or androgynous lesbian, which I'm like, yes, that's the conversation we should be having, right? And as a queer woman, I don't dress like anyone. I don't dress like any. One day I look like a boy, and one day I look like a fashion model. Like it's just whatever I'm feeling in that moment. And I feel like there should be a space for that. And so the fact that it was created and there were authentic voices in the writer's room, and that I was reading this and I was like, yo, this is real. And sometimes I feel like queerness can be associated with confusion or like mental breakdown, like when a character is at her wit's end, then she tries to date a woman to see if that'll fix her life, right? And it's like, no, there are queer people out here who are loving being queer and who are making that conscious decision every day. And what I love about the group as a whole is that it's never like, well, you know, Ty's queer. It just is, right? It's just a fact. And so we don't have to do any extra thing or extra explaining or anything like that. I date just like they date, right? The people that I date, just, you know, so the fact that even that was so real and we've known each other for so long and it's not a thing that we have to think about, right? And now it's so beautiful to be having these discussions post the show, and soon it's coming out. But on set, it was like, Tracy and I would have conversations. I have conversations with Scott. Like, how do you feel about this line? How do you feel about this? But it wasn't like at the forefront of everything. You know what I mean? Which I feel like in my life, my queerness is not always at the forefront of everything that I do, although it's always subconsciously in the way that I move.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations. I mean, you do a fantastic job. I think it's a very important aspect, and that, you know, we need to acknowledge everybody in our community.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And all of these women are blessed to be working with me.
Mercedes here again. My question is for Tracy, but everybody else is also free to chime in if you have something. So we've seen filmmakers in the past or screenwriters in the past use a city as almost like a character. We've seen Spike Lee do it with Brooklyn, or John Singleton do it with LA. And with the gentrification going on in Harlem now, what was the idea of using Harlem as almost a character in this? And what was the feeling and experience filming in Harlem?
I fell in love with Harlem, I think maybe 10 plus years ago. And it was bliggity black then. And just what I loved about it the most, honestly, was when I had Sylvia's, and I'm from South Carolina, and Sylvia's from South Carolina. And I tasted it, and I was like, oh, okay. So this is real soul food in Harlem. And that was my initial connection to it. I know that sounds crazy, but I legitimately care about soul food because I'm from the South. And the fact that Harlem just casually had like 3 or 4, and they were like really, really good. And I was like, oh, like this city like has like a lot of soul to it. And I felt the Southern influence coming in. I felt just like the richness of the history, you know, with the Harlem Renaissance and even the political history of Harlem. It's just like a really rich, important place. And I was not seeing it at all on screen. Like all of the shows that were like New York set were never filming in Harlem. They were like strategically filming all around Manhattan, but not filming in Harlem. And I was like, I want to like capture this glory and put it on the air because it deserves respect. It deserves a lot of love. And so it really did become a character in the show for me. And then when I came back years later, like I guess a decade later, and stayed in Harlem again for a longer period of time, I noticed, I was like, oh, some of the soul that I remember when I was younger is leaving. It's looking a little different. And the feeling that I had when I was initially there, it was still there, but changing. And in the writer's room, there was this compass. It was like a Compass real estate ad. And it had 2 white men sitting on a brownstone stoop. And it was like, I think it was like, welcome to Harlem was the tagline. And it got a lot of heat. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is so brazen. So we were like, okay, we have to deal with gentrification and we have to just call it out because it's just, we love it, but it's definitely changing. The city's changing and we have to acknowledge the gentrification and the loss of culture and the loss of some of the community feel that was there. But it's still a love story to Harlem, and I still very much love the city, but I feel like you can't really talk about it today without acknowledging that the Harlem residents are fighting to hold on to it too.
Thank you for holding on to Harlem. I live here, so I totally can all of that, everything you said. What I want to talk about is the wardrobe. I love the outfits, and I'm just going to touch on, you know, what Jerry said. One day she can dress one way and another way. So my question is, what's the inspiration to the styling of your characters? Did the actors have input into it, or did the stylist just say, here, wear this? This is what I think you should wear.
I'm going to toss it to the actors because They definitely were instrumental in picking their own clothes. And all of them at some point was on a text chain with me talking about some look that they want to be in or they're inspired to be in. And the only directive, from me and from my conversations with Deirdre, who is a Black woman and our costume designer, and she's fantastic. I just wanted it to be unique looking, and I wanted it to be colorful. And just because Camille is an academic does not mean she's not gonna be high fashion and cool. So that was like my directive, and I let Deirdre kind of run with it. And then the cast, I mean, they'll speak to that, but they had a lot of specific ideas about what they wanted too.
Deirdre, she, it's interesting because for me, I understood who Camille was to a degree, and I was still figuring her out and like massaging it. And it was when I met with Deirdre and we sat down and we went through like the mood board and we talked about certain things. And even then, like some of the clothes in the rack, I was like, this is cool, I like this. But when I put it on, first of all, the fit and just the things that she could kind of see that are very unique to her, I instantly found the rest of Camille just by putting on my clothes. I was like, oh, got it. Okay, yeah, and I think that's a testament to her, because I think all of us had a similar experience when we really landed in our characters, because the clothes are also a character on the show, and that's the thing that I love, is like there's such a distinct difference where there's so much of me in Camille in real life, because I am a nerd and I am awkward and all of that, but the distinctiveness, I think, is the world that we've created her in, and a huge part of that is how she looks and how she presents. And when I went in and I tested for it, and Tracy was like, I feel like Camille has goddess locks. I was like, I'm at the goddess lock shop right now. I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah.
I would have to say the same thing. I think for me, it was a bit of a triple whammy, because it was about finding something that I could wear, because I always end up playing characters of affluence. And so it's like, how do you create these characters that come from money, that have their own individual style that doesn't feel similar to what you've done before? So there was that element. And then there was also the element of Quinn being a fashion designer. So what is she saying in her clothes, right? So it's like, so it's those two statements. And then the third thing, believe it or not, was the blonde, because when I went in for a fitting and I had my dark hair, we were finding all these things. I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then when I got the blonde, then it was like, oh girl, we can't use you. And so we had to even find certain colors and certain things that would really go with the whole aesthetic of Quinn. And so that was so much fun to be able to find something that felt, because we had to understand who Quinn was, not just as a person, but what she wanted to communicate through her fashion, since it was an extension of herself and her own art. So there was a softness to her. There's like an over kind of femininity to Quinn, even though I think she's a very strong character, but there's a vulnerability to her. There's like a naivety to her. There's a purity to her, an innocence. So all these things that we really wanted to show through the way that Quinn decided to show up in everyday life. And another thing that I really loved about Deirdre is that she was really keen on finding Black designers. And so we were finding these really incredible pieces, and we were like, oh my gosh, girl. And she was like, this from Harlem, girl, this from, and we're like, what? And so we were so enthused to be able to find designers that were Black, that were native to New York, that were even native to Harlem, to be able to kind of, promote and magnify on our show, which is, of course, extremely important to us.
Yeah, I think for
no, go ahead.
The statement, I feel like Ty is a rich bitch, right? And so her clothes are an extension of that. And working with Deirdre, we were having conversations about like, what would Ty wear, or what Ty wouldn't wear, what she didn't want to put Ty in. But also there were like, she would have things on the rack that I'm like, where does that go? And then she'll put it together and it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And there was a designer that I love, and we couldn't get his shirts. And so she made a print and started getting fabrics. And so a lot of the shirts she just built. And I think the scene when Quinn is talking about, because listen, Quinn in that hair, when that hair come on in the trailer, she's a different bitch. Okay, don't mess with her. But that moment when she's talking about her latest tenderoni, that trailer that comes out, I feel like that moment is such a great, beautiful, and defining moment stylistically with all of the girls. Like you see exactly who each of them are in that scene.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else, Tyler? Who inspired your outfits?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the ladies really hit the nail on the head. But I mean, the first thing is that I love Deirdre because she was open to our input, and I feel like sometimes that's when we get the best. That's when we get the best art is when there's collaboration. Sometimes people want to spearhead it and just be dictators, and she wasn't like that. I think for me, it was important that Ian was in this specific place of here he is. He's this very gifted, talented, studied chef. And he goes over to Paris to bring this whole idea into fruition. So when he comes back to Harlem, it was important for me to have a sense of elevation. I wanted to elevate Harlem. This is why I'm bringing fine French cuisine to Harlem, even though ain't nobody trying to eat my French food. But it was important to me to have some of that sophisticated look, but still stay grounded where I'm from. You know what I'm saying? So he's gonna have some of these pieces that are a bit elevated, but he's still gonna be able to throw a pair of Uptowns on and bust down a fried fish plate. Like he's still from Harlem. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I felt like with my input and with Deirdre's direction, like we kind of found that. We found that contrast, that juxtaposition. So yeah, shouts out to Deirdre. I thought she did her thing.
Yes.
Well done. Thank you.
This question is for Tracy, and it's actually about Camille's character. Having her set in academia and using her lectures as sort of a jumping off point in various episodes, I want to know what that process was like in the writer's room. And did you decide storyline first and then build her lectures around it? Or was that something that you came in with some of these themes that you wanted to explore through her character and then build the story out from there?
That's a really good question. I would say we mostly did the story that we wanted to do. And then inevitably there was always some kind of theme that was tying it all together. And then we would actually research. We would then be like, okay, so if this is kind of what the episode is thematically about, what's an anthropological take that can weave all of this together? So we never wanted the anthropology and the themes to dictate the story, if that makes any sense. We didn't want to be locked in story-wise. So the story always came first, and then we would research and figure out what's a really cool anthropology story or something to weave into this. And it just was a lot of research. And we actually had a couple of Black PhDs come in to the writer's room and talk to us about their experiences. And one of my best friends is a Black PhD professor that I kind of I don't say I based Camille on, but was heavily inspired by her and her life. And yeah, it was just, I thought anthropology was a really cool way to explore modern relationships and dating. And I wanted Camille to have kind of a voice or a theme every episode to kind of tie it together. I always really I guess, dramatic frameworks like that. I think it's always just really cool when you do it. And but we always did story first and then theme second.
Thank you. I love that because actually a group of friends and I, when we were younger, that's what we would call anthropology. That's what we would call dating and specialty of different areas. So it stuck out to me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's really cool.
Hi, Carolyn again. So my question is for Sonequa, Grace, and you, Tracy. So before we talked about female, uterine conditions and and you spoke about sharing the stories in the writer's room. So there's another aspect of the show that I really connected to. So as I mentioned, I have fibers, but I'm also Bayesian. And there's a particular scene that takes place between Angie and Quinn that I was like, yes, finally someone says it. Because when it comes to North American productions, when they're doing a West Indian accent, whether the person's supposed to be Jamaican, Trinidadian, or Vincentian or whatever, they always do this weird approximation of a Jamaican accent. And Quinn addresses Angie about it when she starts imitating a Jamaican accent. And I was so happy that she actually called it up, because she talks to them about it being a form of cultural appropriation, and it's about respect throughout the diaspora. And one thing about female friendships is we can show love, like talking about, like offering sympathy and encouragement during like trying times, like with Ty's character. But we also love to be able to call out the people that we love when they do something that we think is offensive or that we don't like. So can you just, for Saniqua and Grace, can you talk about that scene in particular and about your own experiences where you had to possibly call out someone for something they didn't do? And for Tracy, about the importance of adding that into the show as well, because I think it's something that needs to be addressed in Hollywood in particular, where I like to say every West Indian is not Jamaican and everybody knows on the same.
Yes.
True.
Yes. And gosh, there's so many things I want to say about this, and I'll try to see if I can keep it concise. But I feel like because you don't see a lot of Caribbean American cultural things that are, you know, on the television, on film, that whenever we do see little aspects, we get excited. So even if it's not like exactly right, we're like, oh, we don't care. We just want to, you know, we're small countries. We want to hear it. But the truth of the matter is that when you're talking about New York, when you talk about the world, when you're even talking about Harlem, there is such a cultural dense part of Harlem, of New York, that is Caribbean and is legitimately Caribbean. And what I love about Tracy is that when I was cast as Quinn, Tracy pulled me aside and she was like, listen, I really want to lean on your Caribbean American heritage. She's like, I would love to make your parents Caribbean. And I was like, say what? And so doing that to just not bring not only an authentic lane to this whole dynamic, but also to honor that saturated part of New York that does have a very strong Caribbean influence was really important to Tracy. So we talked about it and she was like, do you have a Caribbean country that you'd like to, you know? And I said, well, you know, I'd love to honor, you know, the Cayman roots. So I would love to have someone that's Caymanian. And she was like, okay. And so we talked about a couple of different countries, and then Tracy tried her best to find who she could find that would be able to do a Caribbean accent or who could be Caribbean. And so we eventually landed on Jasmine Guy being an uptown Jamaican as mom. And then Tracy was like, and I would love for your dad to be Caymanian. Now he has yet to make an appearance. He will one day, but for the first season, we do get to see just an aspect of that cultural representation, which I do love. And so even when we're chatting about it, you know, and Tracy and I had a few conversations about how Quinn would say it, what that would look like, you know, all those things. But I do think that it was really important for us to be able to differentiate just the different cultural aspects of what it means to be Black, because there are many different cultural aspects of Blackness that I think that when we address that, then we really include the full diversity and the full spectrum of what it means to be Black.
Mm-hmm. And Saniqua?
I think so much what I love about this show is that it's giving people the opportunity who would be supporting roles in other shows to have an authentic, fully layered, multi-dimensional experience. And even in, like, as a Black woman, a curvy woman, there's so many times where even in a Black production, I've only been like the minor sassy best friend. And so, and it's a part of a way of mocking and appropriating even our own bodies, our own culture. And so that's what I loved so much about that scene in particular, which actually ended up being like kind of an add-on in the moment, or like the day of, having a moment that really explained that it's not okay. Yes, you are Black, but what you are doing is mocking this experience. You're not allowing this, you're not seeing Jamaican people or Caribbean people as a people. You're seeing it as something
to commoditize.
Exactly, to benefit you right now in this moment. And I think it's just so brilliant, period, about this show is just that everyone, people that we haven't seen before, have a voice. They have multi-layers. They have dreams and goals that they are aspiring to reach. And I'm just excited for the level of representation that people will see from it.
I love that. It's almost like taking the label of what you think something is and adding the flesh, adding the tissue, adding the ligaments, adding the heartbeat to these characters, because they do reflect true human lives.
Yeah.
No, great. Thank you so much. Because I mentioned the fibroids, but also just the West Indian and the Caribbean aspect, and just like being able to see Black women who look like me in all different shades and shapes on TV. I think this show is like very important, because when we talk about representation, we have to remember it's not just white versus Black or white versus other people of color. It's about representation within our culture as well. And you guys really do a fantastic job getting a holistic look at what representation actually really means.
Yes. Diversity inside the diversity.
Yes. Amen.
That's right.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Finally, we have to end on talking about Whoopi Goldberg. So can you share how this happened, how you guys felt about working with Whoopi?
So I wrote Whoopi Goldberg down as my dream casting. Like whenever you're casting, you kind of like put your dream, at least for me, I try to manifest it, but I went ahead and said, I was like, she's never going to do this, but can you just entertain me and make an offer to Whoopi Goldberg? And I was like, if she does it, it would like change my life. But if she doesn't, it's fine. And I just was not thinking she would ever do it, to be honest. And then when I got the call that she was in, I was like, what? She's doing it? And I just was like, stunned. I'm still like kind of speechless over it. And then and Megan can attest to this, but when the first day she was on set, I was scared of her because she is Whoopi Goldberg, and I think she's a living legend and is just someone that like has played so many iconic roles. Like to me, yes, Sister Mary Clarence is an iconic role. It really is. It changed my life. Also Celie from Color Purple, also Ghost. Like she's just done so many things and is an EGOT, just casually an EGOT. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this goddess right here. And so finally she says to me, you're Tracy, right? And I was like, yes. And I couldn't believe she knew who I was. And she was like, yeah, I'm familiar with you. And then I just confessed to her, I was like, I am obsessed with you. And I'm just so grateful and honored that you decided to do this. And then she realized I was maybe going to start crying. And she was like, I don't like all the emotion. It makes me uncomfortable. So I was like, yes, ma'am, I'll pull it together. But it really was a big deal. And I think you guys can see it in the show, but also the trailer. Like she just has so much presence, just easily when you put her in a scene, like she just makes everybody like step their game up. And, Megan got to work with her the most, but I just love the two of them together. I really did. I was like, wow, what a great pairing that you probably never thought you would see together, to be honest. And I thought that they had so much chemistry, and Whoopi was a huge fan of working with Megan, and the whole experience was just really surreal. But I'm going to toss it to you, Megan, because you have to weigh in.
I mean, yeah. Whoopi is, and I said this earlier, like she's magical. And she is such like an advocate of women empowerment. And like, we discovered like one day on set, like one of the directors that came on was someone that Whoopi had been mentoring, and they just finally got a chance to work together by chance, and she's just so humble and wonderful and kind, but kind in a very authentic way. And, I was saying to Jerry earlier that there was at one point where I was having trouble saying Seneca Village. And I was like, Seneca, and it went on and on and on. I was like, why can't I say this right? And I came in the room for my coverage, and she had taped Seneca Village in the broken up way across her boobs so that I could read it on my coverage and say it correctly. And so, yeah, she's really, really, really lovely and special. And I was like mind blown to even work with her. And I was an extra in Soap Dish when I was 10 years old, and I had met her once. So for me, it was like a full circle moment of like, wow. And now we're really working together. That is deep and amazing. So, yeah.
And thank each of you. We love the show, and we are certainly looking forward to many, 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 many seasons of it.
Yes, we are too.
Thank you.
On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, have a great day. Thank you for watching After Roundtable.
Thank you guys so much for the time. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
You all.
All right, see you later, Gil. Good to see you, man.
You too, buddy.
Good to see you.